guy that has been our go-to guy for recruiting for many, many years, 24/7 Sports, BamaOnline.com. John Garcia, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game here in T-Town.
Doing well, Ryan. Good to talk some football again, huh?
Man, it is great to be able to – listen, man, you saved the show, and I appreciate you. Thank you. John, Bill Belichick wearing the Alabama script A, what's that worth in recruiting?
Well, I don't know if it's worth anything more, but it's just further validation for what I think you see from recruiting departments, what you see from perception when you watch the NFL draft. It all ties in. And there's no doubt that this time of year, Nick is very conscious about the draft, about projections, about the record Alabama could break this year if they get 4+ first-rounders. So I think it just ties into all of that. And look, they have a long history, the best coach in college, the best coach in the NFL. Bill hired Nick way back in the day, and it was never really bad blood, even though maybe there was for a short time with the Cleveland Browns, but it was just disagreement. But they're both defensive guys, cut from the same cloth, similar age. There's a very clear and easy to see overlap there, and it's just kind of a reminder of that. And I think when you're dealing with kids, 16, 17, 18-year-olds in recruiting, it's never a bad thing to remind them, hey, don't forget, this is kind of my guy. So I think that was just another example of that.
Well, and the kids that you talk to and the recruits, the high-profile guys, all of them, and even the smaller star guys, they all have a dream of playing on Sunday afternoon. And when you see the pro day televised on 2 different television networks, when you see the draft picks that they've had, now Alabama puts those publicity statements out, like the statement I'm just now reading on Twitter, all eyes on Bama, all 32 NFL teams here on campus, including 8 GMs, 2 head coaches. That is a value when we talk about recruiting.
There's no doubt. I've talked about it with you a bunch, but, in the last 5 years, there's been a shift. 5 years ago, kids were telling me, and this is 5 stars on down, kids were telling me, I want to win. I want to win in college. I want to have a chance to win a ring. And Alabama obviously afforded that, 5 of the last 10 national championships, et cetera. But it has shifted, Ryan, to I want to get to the NFL. I want to take care of mom. I want to take care of my family. I want to be the first. I want to do it my way. Kids are talking about 3 and done in high school now. For the next 3 years, I will be attending the University of Alabama. That's what the conversation has shifted towards. So I think, accordingly, a lot of schools have done that. And then obviously the easier transition there comes from Nick Saban, who came from the NFL and who coached in the NFL at a bunch of different places, maybe more so than some other guys. So naturally, as that conversation has shifted with kids, schools have adjusted, and Alabama has always tried to be at the forefront of that conversation. But there's no doubt the NFL, getting paid, taking care of mom, that's kind of priority one with the majority of kids we deal with now. And that was not the case when I got into this business, when it was about winning on Saturdays. Doesn't mean they don't want to win, but there's a greater goal, a greater purpose, a greater path that they're looking toward.
John, we have spent a lot of time certainly looking at Evan Neal. Let me ask you, when you see this young man, what do you see in his ability? Because it's going to be getting a lot of focus when you talk about early enrollee, and I know we've talked to you about him before, but kind of go back to Bradenton, Florida, IMG Academy, and break down Evan Neal and what you see in this young man.
I see progress, and I think with him, that's exactly what you want. This kid was 400 pounds not very long ago, an inside player, a mauler who was just, frankly, just bigger and heavier than anybody that he was blocking. So he was kind of able to get by. But when you go to IMG, you're playing defensive linemen who are pretty much as good as you or better. So he's going against Ohio State players and Alabama players and Florida Gators and Georgia Bulldogs, et cetera. So over time, he got kind of a crash course. And, hey, you can't just lean on people anymore. So he shed this kind of mauler mantra and really committed to playing tackle, committed to footwork and length on top of his diet. And he's lost, 40, 50 pounds in the last year or so. And he's actually become kind of a patient, almost a finesse guy, even though 360 is still tough to deal with. His last event was the Under Armour All-America game. I was there every single day, and these guys were trying to bull rush him, and he wouldn't allow it. But he wasn't over-aggressive. He mature, allowed them to come to him. And once he gets those big paws on you, it's kind of a wrap. So I've seen him transition not only from a 400-pounder to a 360-pounder, not only from a guard to a tackle, but also a guy who was overly aggressive / maybe a little lazy to a hard worker, patient tackle who's going to allow his length and footwork to beat you just as much as his size and strength can. So the trajectory is still pointed up for Evan Neal. He's still early into his college career, so he still has some things to learn. But, man, there's not a lot of guys, especially big guys, who have progressed like he has in the last 18 months. So it makes the next 18 months that much more intriguing, and I think that's why a lot of people expect big things out of him.
We're talking to John Garcia Jr. right now, BamaOnline.com, 24/7 Sports. John, are we learning who the elite recruiters are within this staff? When you look at the new coaches is really what I'm trying to focus in on.
Yeah, we're still sort of navigating that. We're hearing a few names a little bit more than others, I would say, with this new group, and I think it's a mixture, too, because a lot of these guys have been around. So for every Sal Sinceri, hat tip that I hear one for Holman Wiggins and for Charles Huff, who are guys with a more recently upticked national reputation. So I think it's a good mixture of young and old, inexperienced and experienced, and I think it's proving pretty nice on the recruiting trail. Bama's been around the number one class for the entirety that we've tracked 2020. That's not expected to change here anytime soon, and this weekend, it's going to be a pretty big weekend on campus with kids visiting for the scrimmage, and I think it would be a bit of an upset if that class was not added to either on the offensive line or perhaps at wide receiver with a kid who I think is one of the best players in America, Tyu Jones-Bell, big wide receiver out of Miami, actually, who you guessed it, Alabama is selling on the Amari Cooper role and the Amari Cooper trajectory. So I think this wide receiver class is going to be a big one for Bama, 3 already on board. You could get another one here in the next little bit, and I think, that class is going to be strong, and I think different guys are sort of strutting their stuff. And when you talk about Florida, Sal Sinceri is going to have some involvement, but some other guys are going to as well. And I think that's what's always made Alabama tough to recruit against, because they don't rely on one coach for one area or one position. There's a lot of overlapping in the recruiting process, obviously all funneling up to Nick Saban.
John, being a recruiting analyst, and as long as you've been in the business, I'm curious of where you see what we're labeling as free agency with this immediate eligibility. I watched your tweets yesterday. I watched a lot of people in the business react. And when you guys react the way that you do, it grabbed my attention. Let me ask you, when you talk about Tate Martell being immediate eligibility, what does that mean going down the pipe when we talk about how it's going to affect these depth charts and these rosters around college football?
It means, I don't want to say chaos, but it means fluidity and movement more so than we've really come to know. It's going to feel like the NFL in this time of year, free agency, just before the draft. Everybody's positioning themselves for the draft, and some people are doing it by signing players. Some people are dumping players so that they can move up in the draft to position themselves. I think that's what we're going to start seeing a little bit with college football. If there are no consequences, no resistance to change in terms of changing teams, I mean, why wouldn't you if you lose out that quarterback battle? Why wouldn't you if, you get banged up and somebody passes you on the depth chart? Now, the NCAA is telling you, hey, you can go somewhere else, maybe even in conference, and play immediately. So the thought of greener pastures are going to be more prevalent than ever. And with the amount of impatience with all these athletic directors and these coaches, the coaching turnover is not going to slow down anytime soon. So now, with the Tate Martell situation, we know, hey, even if you promote from within and everything looks and kind of feels the same at one school with the assistant getting the head job, it still doesn't matter. You can still bail and be taken care of and play immediately without any wasted eligibility, any wasted time, anything. So you can go to a school like Miami and compete, and now I would say become the front runner to win the job. Justin Fields is probably going to be the guy at Ohio State on that same token. A little bit of a different situation, but again, just almost the ease of these appeals. It just seems like they're unwilling to say no. So why wouldn't you leave for a greener pasture if, again, like we talked about earlier, you're looking at the NFL in 3 years. So if year one doesn't go the way you want it to at school X, school Y, Z, A, B, C, and D may still have space for you. And I think it really blurs the line on communication, tampering. I mean, there's so many slippery slopes that can come out of something like this. I don't blame Tate Martell. I don't blame Justin Fields. I don't blame the kids. I blame the system a little bit more. What are we looking for? What do we want with college football? Do we just want it to be the minor leagues of the NFL? If so, pay the kids and make it structured that way. But if you don't, if you want it to be about education and stability, then be a little more strict. It just seems like the NCAA wakes up and says, well, today we're going to be more strict. Well, tomorrow we're going to be, hey, free for all, go do what you want to do. So I want an identity, and I want it to be very clear what the goal and the intent is. And I think right now we really don't have that. So I think it's naturally trending the other way.
Great analysis, as always. College football recruiting analyst John Garcia. Connect with him at John Garcia _Jr. Available right there on the Twitter account. Join those thousands of people that really dialed in the recruiting side of things. John, it's always great to be able to catch up. Hopefully we can do it in a couple of weeks, man. I appreciate you being part of the show here in T-Town.
Always my pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for having me.